One of you is going to have to move out, Cheryl. I'd rather you heard it from me than got it in the mail. He said it standing on my own driveway in September with a rake in his hand. He had been cleaning my gutters. He had cleaned my gutters every fall for 19 years. I didn't argue with him. I didn't ask him to leave. I set the grocery bag down on the hood of my car and let the sentence stand there in the open where we could both look at it. My sister was inside making coffee. She had the window open. She heard every word of it and she did not come out. And I have never asked her why. Merle waited. He wanted me to make a noise. Everybody who has ever known me expects a noise, because I am the one who smooths a thing over, who says it's fine, who sends the other person home with something wrapped in foil. I looked at the rake and then at him. "Read me the part that says that," I said. "Out loud, off the paper." He didn't. Not that day. He did not read it out loud in front of anybody for 9 weeks. Now, I know how that sounds. It sounds like two neighbors having words over a fence. It was not. By the middle of November, 77 houses on that street would be asked to sign their name to a sentence about my family. 52 of them would end it. The number who had signed went up on a board by the mailboxes in dry erase marker, and everybody saw it on the way to work. My name is Cheryl Danko. Nothing about this begins with a letter. It begins with a hedge in March, 6 months before anybody said the word family to me like it was a legal term. The house is at 4416 Lark Hill Drive in Haviland, Indiana, which is a town of 11,000 people and one water tower with a dent in it. My father bought that house in 1968. He was 26. He worked at the axle plant out on Route 9 for 31 years. He paid the house off in 19 of them. Every time he said that number out loud, he said it the same way, like a man setting down something heavy. My mother was Adela. She was a small woman with big hands. She raised us in that house, and she died 15 months before Merle Vogt stood on my driveway with a rake, at 84, in the back bedroom, on a Tuesday, in the middle of the afternoon. I am Cheryl. I was 56 that fall. I run the deli counter at Ruberg's Foods on Chestnut, and I have run it for 31 years, which is a joke my father would have liked if he had lived to hear it. People think a deli counter is meat. A deli counter is a town. I know that Ray Sabota takes a half-pound of the low-sodium turkey because of his blood pressure, and that he started buying it 2 weeks before his wife found out he'd been to the cardiologist. I know which women order the good ham the week their daughters come home, and the cheap ham the week they don't. I know when somebody stops coming in. That is the part nobody tells you. You don't learn a town by what people say to you. You learn it by the Thursday somebody's order changes and they don't mention why. My sister is Lynette. She's 4 years younger and she came home 9 years ago, in February, with 2 suitcases and a laundry basket of shoes. 3 months after her husband told her he was moving to Fort Wayne with a woman from his office. She never went anywhere after that. She got on at Dr. Prasad's office answering phones, and she took the back bedroom. And then after Mom died, she took the front one. And the 2 of us lived in that house the way you live in a coat you've had a long time. We were not a sad household. That matters given where this finishes. We had a routine, and the routine was good. She did the yard, I did the food. On Sundays, we drove out to the cemetery and then to the Dutch kitchen and split the fish. There was nobody left alive who had an opinion about how the 2 of us ought to live. The hedge was my mother's. It ran the whole north property line, from the front sidewalk back to the garage, and then it turned the corner at Lark Hill and Vane and ran another 40 feet along the side street. Lilac. Old lilac, the common purple kind, planted in 1969 by a woman who did not know anything about gardening except that her mother had one. By the time I'm talking about, that hedge was 56 years old and taller than the garage roof. In the 3rd week of April every year, you could smell it from the stop sign. There was a coffee can on the back step the whole time she was dying, and there is one there now. It's a Folgers can with 4 holes punched in the bottom with a screwdriver. My mother kept one going from about 1971 until the spring she couldn't get down the step anymore. A lilac throws suckers up out of its own roots, and if you leave them, the hedge walks across your yard, so twice a year she'd dig them out. She would not put them in the trash. She'd pot them in a can with dirt out of the tomato bed and set them on the step. Sooner or later, somebody would say something nice about the smell coming over the fence in April. They went home with a stick in a can. I never once asked her where they went. It was a thing my mother did, the way she rinsed a milk jug before she threw it out. You don't ask. The first letter came in March, and it was not about my sister. It was about the hedge. The association has received a complaint regarding the sight line at the intersection of Larkhill Drive and Vane Street. Vegetation on Lot 41 exceeds the height permitted within the corner visibility triangle. Please correct within 30 days. There is a school bus stop at that corner. 9 kids. I want that on the record because for a long time I made this simpler than it was. I trimmed it. I paid Dale Mauer's boy $40 and he took 2 feet off the corner run with a hedge trimmer, and it looked awful for a month. And I sent the association a photograph. In May, there was another letter. In June, there was another one. Each one was polite. Each one said 30 days. Each one came with a page from the covenants attached, highlighted in yellow, with Merle's initials in the corner in ballpoint. I stopped opening them right away. I'd set them on the counter by the toaster and get to them on Sunday. Then September came. The September letter was a different animal, and I knew it before I read it, because it came certified and I had to sign for it at the post office with the girl watching me. I read it standing at the counter by the toaster, and I read it twice, and then I sat down on the step stool. Article 4, Section 2 of the Declaration of Covenants for Larkhill Edition was recorded in 1979. It provides that no lot shall be occupied other than by a single family. The association's occupancy policy, adopted March 1994, defines a single family. It is one person or 2 persons married to one another, together with their unmarried children, and not more than 1 additional dependent relative residing therein. The association has determined that the occupancy of Lot 41 is not in conformity. I read that last line about 9 times. Not in conformity. Not one person. Not 2 persons married to one another. Not a child. And Lynette Danko, 52 years old, employed, licensed, paying half of everything since the day she walked in with the laundry basket, is not a dependent relative. She was a person living in the house she was born in, with her sister. The letter said what came next, in 1 paragraph, and the paragraph was the reason I sat down. Written notice. A hearing before the board. Then, if the condition continued, a daily assessment against the lot. Then a notice of delinquency. Then a lien recorded against the property, which is a word my father would have understood before I did, because a lien is the thing that stands between you and owning a thing outright. Nobody was going to come and put us on the sidewalk. That is not how it works, and that is not what frightened me. What frightened me was arithmetic. A number that goes up every day, attached to a house that got paid off in 1987 by a man who never once bought himself a new car. Lynette read it after her shift. She read it fast, the way she reads everything. This is Merle, she said. This is Merle being Merle. It's on association letterhead. He types the letterhead, Cheryl. She laughed. I remember that she laughed and that I didn't, and that for about 4 seconds there was a small cold space between us on the kitchen floor that I chose not to look at. If a story like this one is worth your afternoon, do me a favor and share this with somebody who has a sister. There's more of it, and it gets bigger than a letter. The next morning, I went to work and I stood at the counter and I sliced provolone for Bonnie Traxler for 11 minutes. Bonnie is a talker. Bonnie's husband is on the zoning board, and Bonnie has never in her life held a piece of information for longer than it takes to get to the register. Is your sister going to like it out there? she said. I kept slicing. Out where, Bon? Terre Haute. Sherry's girl works in that building. She said Lynette came through in April, the whole thing, the little tour and everything. She fanned herself with her list. Sherry said they made her an offer, and she said no. Isn't that something? Everybody's leaving, and she says no. April. My mother died in June of the year before. The first Hedge letter came in March. The certified letter came in September. April sat in the middle of all of it like a stone in a shoe. My sister had gone down to Terre Haute in April, alone, in her good coat. She had a job put in front of her, and she turned it down. Then she came home and made dinner and never said one word about it to me. "Half a pound?" I said. "Make it 3/4. Ken's brother's coming." I wrapped it and I taped it and I wrote the price on the tape and I handed it over the glass and I smiled at her. And I did not say one thing about my sister for 9 weeks. 9 weeks. That is how long I carried what Bonnie Traxler handed me across a meat counter for the price of 3/4 of a pound of provolone. Merle Vogt came to the door 4 times. The first time was the driveway with the rake. The second time was 7 days later on a Saturday morning, and he brought his wife's zucchini bread, which, I want you to understand, was not a tactic. Merle has brought that bread to every house on that street for 19 years. He brought it to us the week my mother died. He stood in our kitchen that week and cried, an actual grown man crying into a dish towel, because my mother used to send him home with soup when his first wife was sick in 1998. That is who was standing in my doorway with a foil pan in September. "I don't want this to get formal," he said. "It came certified, Merle. That's the process. I don't set the process. You're the president. I'm the president of a thing that has rules in it." He shifted the pan to his other arm. "Cheryl, I'm not saying Lynette isn't family. Nobody's saying that. The document says what a household is. And the document was there before either of us. Then bring me the document." He nodded like I'd asked him for the time. "I'll get you a copy." The third time was a Tuesday evening, 10 days later, and he did not have a copy. He had a printout of a page with a header that said, Larkhill Edition Homeowners Association, Occupancy Policy, and a date in the corner that said March 1994. I looked at it on the porch under the light. "This isn't the covenants," I said. "This is a policy. It's how the board has read the covenants for 30 years. Merle, is this recorded?" He looked at me the way a man looks at a car that's making a sound. "Recorded where?" "At the courthouse, with the deed, the way the covenants are." "It's the board's policy," he said. "It's been the policy since before I was on it." The fourth time was the last, and it was the worst, because he didn't come to the door. He came at 7 in the morning while I was scraping the windshield. He stood on the sidewalk at the end of my driveway, on the public side of the property line, which was very Merle. He said, "I've asked Kay to pull everything. If it's there, you'll have it. And if it isn't? Then we'll do it right," he said, and he went on down the street to the mailboxes. I did not know what that meant. I found out in October. Kay Brummett is 44, and she has been the association's secretary for 2 years, and she took the job because nobody else raised their hand at the meeting. She teaches 4th grade. She calls me Mrs. Danko, even though I have told her twice not to. She called me on a Thursday night, and I could hear her kitchen behind her, a dishwasher and a kid asking about a permission slip. "Mrs. Danko, I've been through the file box twice." "Okay." "The declaration is there. 1979, the whole thing, with the plat. It says single family. That part's real. I won't pretend otherwise." She stopped. "But the definition Merle's using isn't in the declaration. It's on a typed page in the box, and there's no signature, and there's no book and page number on it, and there's nothing at the county with it. So it was never recorded." I went to the recorder's office on my lunch. I asked the lady to help me. We looked at everything filed against the addition since 1979. Her voice got smaller. There are two amendments, one in 1983 about fences and one in 1990 about basketball hoops. That's it. That's all there is. I sat down on the arm of the couch. Kay, have you told Merle? I told him Tuesday. What did he say? There was a long pause with the dishwasher in it. He said, "Then we'll fix it," she said. Mrs. Danko, I don't think you should be relieved. I did not sleep much that night, and in the morning, I did the thing I should have done in March. I drove to the Cushman County Recorder's office myself. It's on the second floor of the courthouse annex, past the assessor, and it smells like every county office in America, which is warm paper and a machine that's been running since 1974. The woman at the counter is named Peg, and she has been there 22 years, and she buys a pound of the smoked cheddar every other Friday. "Cheryl Danko," she said, "you're a long way from your slicer." I told her what I wanted, and she pulled it in 9 minutes. The Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions for Lark Hill Edition, recorded November 1979, Book 214, page 88. 77 lots. Article 4, Section 2 is 1 sentence long. No lot shall be occupied other than by a single family. That is all of it. There is no definition under it. There is nothing about married couples, or unmarried children, or dependent relatives. Whoever typed that page in 1979 used the phrase the way people used it then. It never occurred to them that anybody would need it explained. Everything else, the whole paragraph in my certified letter, the part that made my sister not a person, came off a page in a file box in a clubhouse with nobody's name at the bottom. Then the fence amendment, then the basketball hoops, and then nothing. 35 years of nothing. I stood at that counter with my reading glasses on, and I felt something I did not expect, which was not relief. It was the opposite. Because a rule that isn't written down anywhere is a rule that can still be written down. I photographed all 4 pages with my phone, and I drove to work, and I was 11 minutes late for the first time in 6 years. The hearing was on the 9th of October in the clubhouse at 7 in the evening. That was my right under the letter, and I took it. I put on the navy blazer I wear to funerals, and I brought a manila envelope with 4 pages in it from the recorder's office, printed at the library for 10 cents a page. There were 5 of them behind the folding table and 2 of us in front of it. Merle, Kay, Roy Tolliver. A man named Dean Spurlock, who I have never in 20 years heard say a word. And Charlene Ivy, who used to cut my mother's hair. Lynette came. She had not wanted to, and she came, and she sat with her purse on her knees like a woman at the DMV. Merle read the citation. Then he said, "You have the floor." "I've got 4 pages," I said. I passed them down the table. "That's the Declaration for Lark Hill Edition, out of Book 214, page 88. That's the fence amendment from 1983. That's the basketball hoops from 1990. That's the index page showing everything filed against this edition since 1979. Nobody picked them up but Kay. "The definition you sent me isn't on any of them," I said. "It's on a typed page in your file box with nobody's signature on it." Charlene said, "Cheryl, honey, that policy's been the policy since 1994, I know, Merle told me." I kept my hands flat on the table because they wanted to move. That's 30 years of a board reading a sentence a certain way. That isn't a covenant. My father signed for a covenant. He never signed for a typed page. Roy Tolliver said, "So what is it you're asking us for?" And that is the question I got wrong. I said, "Withdraw the citation." I should have said something else. For 2 years I have known I should have said something else. I have never been able to decide what. All I know is that it wasn't that. What I did was hand 5 people a very clean piece of information about a hole in their own paperwork, out loud, with the secretary taking minutes. Merle looked at the pages for a long time. Then he squared them up and passed them back to me. "You're right," he said. Lynette's head came up. You're right, and I appreciate you doing the work, because I don't think anybody's looked at that box since Delmar Kitts died. He put his pen down. The board's going to withdraw the citation. Lynette actually laughed, one breath of it, out loud. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me yet, Merle folded his hands. Because the sentence in the declaration hasn't changed. It still says single family. What we don't have is a definition that's been done properly. And now there's a room full of people who know it. He looked at Kay. That gets fixed the way it should have been fixed in '94. We take it to the owners. Roy said, Merle, that's a whole petition. Then it's a whole petition, he said. Charlene Ivy said, and if they don't sign it? Then they don't sign it, Merle said. And I'll have found out something about this street I'd rather know than not know. We walked home. It is 400 feet, and we did not say anything for the first 300 of it. Then Lynette said, Did we just win? I don't think so. He withdrew it, Cheryl. He withdrew a letter, I said. He's going to go get a better one. She stopped on the sidewalk in front of the Hartleys. You made him do that, she said. You know that, right? He didn't have this idea until you handed him those pages. I did not answer her. That is exactly what happened. There was also no version of that night where I sat in that room and did not defend my sister. Both of those things are true, and neither one cancels the other out. The notice went up 11 days later. The hedge came down on Wednesday, the 15th of October. I was at work. Lynette was at Dr. Prasad's. There was a truck from a landscaping outfit in Marion, 2 men and a chipper, and they started at the corner of Larkhill and Vane at 9 in the morning, and they were finished before 2. I came around the corner at 4:15 with the car window down out of habit, and there was nothing there. Not trimmed, not shaped. Cut to the dirt. The whole north line and the whole corner run, 140 feet of it, and the stumps ground out, an orange marking tape strung between 2 stakes, where a 56-year-old Hedge had been that morning. You could see straight into the Hartleys' kitchen. I had never in my life seen the Hartleys' kitchen. I sat in the car in my own driveway with the engine running. There was a coffee can on the back step. There is always a coffee can on the back step. My mother kept one going for 40 years. A Folgers can, holes in the bottom, 2 or 3 lilac suckers rooting in potting soil. A lilac throws suckers, and if you don't dig them out, they take the whole yard. If you are my mother, you do not throw them away. That can was still sitting there. 3 little sticks with 4 leaves each. Merle came over that evening. He didn't wait to be asked in, and he didn't sit down. It was scheduled in August, he said. The contract's dated August 11th. Cheryl, this started in March. I know when it started. Then you know it isn't what you think it is. Merle, I said, you cut down my mother's hedge in the middle of a fight about whether my sister lives here. It's a corner. It's 9 children. I know how many children it is. He stood in my kitchen with his hat in his hand. 68 years old, a man who had cleaned my gutters every fall for 19 years. He said, I can't run it 2 ways depending on who it is. If I do it for you, I have to do it for everybody. And then there's no association. There's just whoever complains loudest. And the terrible thing, the thing I have turned over for 2 years, is that he was not wrong about that. He was only wrong about everything else. Get out of my house, I said. He went. He put his hat on at the door, the way men his age do. The following Monday, he came back down the street with a clipboard. The notice went up on the bulletin board by the mailbox cluster on Monday, the 20th of October, in a plastic sleeve with a thumbtack in each corner. The annual meeting was Saturday, the 15th of November. Everybody on that street had 4 weeks and a number. It said that the board proposed to amend the recorded declaration of covenants for Larkhill Edition to include a definition of single-family household. It said the proposed language was available from the secretary. It said that under Indiana law, the amendment could be submitted to the county recorder if 2/3 of all lot owners approved it by signed petition. 77 lots. 2/3 of 77 is 51 1/3. 52. The notice explained the process in 6 lines, and the 6 lines are the whole reason I am telling you any of this. Only board members could carry the petition forms. That was in the rules already, from 1979, and it was written to stop exactly the kind of thing you are imagining: neighbors pressuring neighbors on a porch. An owner who wanted to sign got a form from a board member, took it inside, signed it, sealed it in the envelope it came with, and dropped it in the gray lockbox screwed to the clubhouse door. Kay opened the lockbox on Mondays and Thursdays, with Merle standing next to her. They counted. They wrote one number on the board. The last line of the notice, in smaller type, said that running totals were preliminary and subject to final verification of the owner of record for each lot. I read that line 4 times in November, and it did not mean one thing to me. I have thought about it a great deal since. One number. Not names. Not lots. And because a petition that misses the threshold is never filed with the county, there would never be a list. If they hit 52, the whole thing goes to the recorder and becomes public. If they don't, it goes in a box, and the box goes wherever boxes go. So I could talk to any human being on that street for the rest of my life and never be told who signed. That is the shape of the next 4 weeks. Everything that happened inside it. The first number went up on the Thursday, 3 days later. 18 houses in 3 days. I stood at that bulletin board in my work coat at 6:20 in the morning with my breath going up in front of the number. And I did the thing you do. You go through the street in your head, in order, and you start assigning. I got it wrong. I got almost all of it wrong. I want that said now because I did not know it yet. I did not knock on 18 doors that week. I did not knock on any. I went to work. What I did instead was start doing what I have done for 31 years, which is stand behind 11 feet of glass and let a town come to me. The number went up on the Monday. That afternoon, Gordon Reike came in for his Kaiser rolls. Lot 60, the brick ranch with the flag. Gordon's wife has MS, and Gordon has been buying the same 6 rolls and the same pound of ham every Thursday for 4 years, and he has never once said a personal word to me across that glass. He paid, and he took his change, and he stood there. I nearly signed it, he said. I kept my hands on the counter. Okay. Merle came Tuesday. I had the pen. He put his change in his coat pocket without looking at it. And I got to thinking about if it was Donna and her sister in that house instead of Donna and me. If I go first, which I will. Gordon. They'd get a letter, he said. Wouldn't they? He picked up his bag. He didn't wait for me to answer, which was a kindness, because I did not have one. That was the first time it occurred to me that this was not a fight about my house. 9 people on that street were living in something that would not survive 1 funeral. 12 in a week. That was the worst week. That was the week I stopped sleeping in a real way and started coming out to the mailboxes at 10 at night when nobody was around to look at a number I had already seen at 6 in the morning. 39 of 52. 13 to go and 16 days. That Sunday, I drove out to the cemetery by myself and did not tell my sister I was going. I stood there in the wind for about 4 minutes. I did not have anything to say to my mother that she would have wanted to hear. And that was the week Nadine Chumley came into Ruberg's and got in my line when there was no line at the register, holding 1 thing of sour cream. Nadine is 73, lot 5. She and my mother were not friends. I want to be accurate. They were 2 women who lived on the same street for 50 years and did not particularly like each other. She put the sour cream on the glass. Your mother came to my house in 1996, she said. Nadine, I've got a line. You have not got a line. She didn't move. My Delbert was out of work 11 months in 1996, and I did not tell one soul on that street. One Saturday, your mother came up my walk with a coffee can with a stick in it. She asked could she put it in by my porch because she'd run out of room. And then she came back every Saturday for a year to check on it. Nadine's chin went. There was never any room in it. She had a whole hedge. She just wanted to come up the walk. I stood there with a pound of sour cream in my hand. I've got that lilac yet, she said. It's up over the gutter now. She paid. She went. I did not knock on Nadine Chumley's door, and I never asked her what she did with her form. And 16 days later, I stood in a school cafeteria and did not know. And I still don't. I ran into him at the mailboxes on the Saturday, between the 39 and the 44. He had the plastic sleeve open, and he was taking the notice out to put a fresh one in, because the first one had gotten wet and the ink had run. There was nowhere for either of us to go. It's a concrete pad with 8 boxes on it. Cheryl, Merle. He got the thumbtacks out of the corners and put them in his shirt pocket, all 4, one at a time. I want to say one thing, and then I'll leave you be, he said. This isn't about your sister. It says her name on it. It doesn't have anybody's name on it. He smoothed the new page against the board. It says what a household is. It'll say it after you and I are both gone. Merle, do you know what my mother would have said to you about this? He stopped with his hand on the sleeve. Yes, he said. She'd have said, sit down, I'll get you a plate. And then she'd have never let me in her house again as long as she lived. She'd have been pleasant to me on the sidewalk for 20 years. I'd never once have been able to prove it. He put the last tack in. Your mother was the hardest woman on this street, he said. Nobody ever noticed because she was so nice about it. He walked home. I stood there with my electric bill in my hand, 5 in 4 days. Delores Vanhook came to my house on a Wednesday night. Lot 9, 79 years old. Her husband Bud died on the 21st of October, 6 days after the Hedge came down, of a thing that took 2 hours in the emergency room in Marion. She stood on my step in Bud's barn coat with the sleeves rolled twice. I'm not coming in, she said. I'll say it out here and go home. Dee, come in, it's 38 degrees. I signed it, Cheryl. The porch light was on. There was a can of lilac sticks on the step behind her, and she was standing about 10 inches from it. I'm telling you to your face because I am not going to sit across from you at the Dutch kitchen in the spring and have it be a thing I did behind you. Her chin was up. Merle came Monday. He said if the language gets fixed, the whole thing goes away and everybody knows where they stand. And I thought about Bud. And I thought, well, I'd like something in this world to be settled. Dee, don't be kind to me right now, she said. I couldn't take it. She went down the steps and across the grass to her own house, and I watched her the whole way because she is 79 and it was dark. Then I went in and told my sister. Lynette was at the table with a mug. She heard the whole thing without saying anything, and then she said, Cheryl, do you want me to just go? No. Because I could go. It would be over on Thursday. I said no. You didn't even think about it. I don't have to think about it, I said. This is your house. Dad's name and Mom's name and then both of ours. It's on the deed. It is your house. And Lynette looked at her mug and said, that's not the same thing as it being where I live. I let it go by. I have gone over that sentence more times than any other sentence in this story. At the time, I let it go by. Terre Haute had called her again that Monday, and I knew it, and she did not know that I knew it. In September, I had decided to be the kind of sister who does not use a thing like that. I still don't know if that was love or cowardice. It might have been both. They are closer together than people say. The Monday count. 3 to go. 5 days. That was the morning at the bus stop. I do not have children. I walk down to that corner most mornings anyway. Since the hedge came out, you can see the whole intersection from my kitchen window, and it is worse that way, not better, watching them stand there in the dark in November. Two mothers were at the corner. Angie Pruitt, who is 31 and whose mother I went to school with, and a younger one I didn't know, new in the Ostermans' old place. They were talking. I came up the sidewalk and they stopped talking. Not turned away, not rude. They said good morning, both of them, in a pleasant voice, and then they stood there and looked at the road until the bus came. I have been in this town my entire life. I have handed those women their lunch meat. And I stood on that corner and could not think of one thing to say that would not have been a question about a form. That is what 52 doors does to a street. It doesn't make people cruel. It makes them careful. Careful is worse, because you can't be angry at it. I went home and I sat in my car in the driveway for a while before I went in. Thursday the 13th, 2 days before the annual meeting. 51. 1. One house. 26 people had not signed, and it did not matter, because one of them was going to, or wasn't, and there were 77 mailboxes on that street, and I had no idea which one it was going to come out of. I did not knock on a single door that week either. People keep asking me that. They ask it like there was a version of that November where I went house to house and made a case and shook hands and turned it around. There wasn't. Every form was in a sealed envelope in a gray box on a clubhouse door. There was nothing to argue with. There was nothing to be charming at. All I could do was go to work and slice ham for a town that was deciding something about me one envelope at a time. Come home, put the trash out on Tuesdays, water 3 sticks in a coffee can on the back step, because my mother would have. On the Friday I got out the good tablecloth and ironed it, which made no sense, and Lynette walked through the kitchen and looked at me doing it and did not say one word. The meeting was Saturday at 7. The association meets in the clubhouse, which holds 30 people if 4 of them stand. That year, they moved it to the Multipurpose Room at Larkhill Elementary, because Kay teaches there and could get the key, and because they were expecting a crowd. I have been in that room 100 times. Pancake breakfasts, a blood drive, my mother's Girl Scout troop in 1974, which is a thing I know from a photograph and not from memory. It smells like floor wax and rubber mats, and it has a stage at one end with a curtain the color of oatmeal. They set out 60 chairs. They ran out of chairs. I sat in the 4th row on the aisle with my coat on my lap. Lynette sat on my left. She did not want to come, and she came anyway, and she wore the good coat, the Terre Haute coat, and I noticed it and said nothing. Merle sat at a folding table on the floor in front of the stage with Kay on his right and Roy Tolliver, the treasurer, on his left. He had on a tie. In 19 years, I had never seen Merle vote in a tie. He did the minutes. He did the budget. He did the retention pond, which took 11 minutes. A room of 60 people sat through all 11 without one person making a sound. Everybody in there knew what was coming after it, and nobody wanted to be the one to hurry it. Then he said, Item 5, Proposed Amendment to Article 4. He explained it the way he explains everything, flat and in order, like a man reading a furnace manual. 2/3 of all lot owners, 52. He said the count as of the Thursday opening was 51. Then he said, Before we go on, Kay and I went down to the recorder's office Thursday afternoon and pulled the current owner of record for all 77 lots. I'm told that's the proper way to verify a petition. I'd never done one before. There was a little noise in the room. Somebody behind me said something to somebody else. 2 of them don't count, Merle said. He looked at his page. Lot 22 is Wayne and Sandra Farrell, joint. 1 signature came back. It needs both. He made a mark. That's 50. He looked at the page longer for the second one. I remember that. I remember him looking at it longer. Lot 9, he said. Bud Vanhook passed on the 21st of October. The lot's still in his name at the county. The estate hasn't been through. Delores isn't the owner of record yet, so her signature can't be counted. The room went completely quiet. Delores Vanhook was in the second row on the other side, in Bud's barn coat, 3 weeks a widow. And Merle Vogt, who had been standing in that woman's kitchen with a foil pan 11 days earlier, said out loud, to a room of 60 of her neighbors, that the paperwork did not yet recognize her household. He did not soften it. I have thought about whether he understood what he had just done. My honest answer is that he understood it exactly and said it anyway. The alternative was to bend a rule for a widow. He had spent 19 years telling people he could not do that. Delores did not stand up, and she did not walk out. She sat there in that barn coat with her chin up, and she looked at the front of the room, and beside her, Wanda Reich reached over and took hold of her arm above the elbow, and did not let go of it. He made the mark. 49, he said. Nobody moved for a second. Then Roy Tolliver said, Merle, we can extend. Give it till the January meeting. We can, Merle said. It's a motion if somebody wants to make it. Roy made it. Somebody in the back seconded it, and that is where I stood up. I did not have anything written down. I had thought about 100 things to say since September, and I had thrown all of them out because every one of them was an argument, and you cannot argue a street into loving you. Merle, I said, would you read Article 4, Section 2 out loud? The recorded one, the 1979. He looked up. Cheryl, you've never read it in a room. You've only ever mailed it. He looked at Kay. Kay slid the page over to him without being asked. He read it in that flat furnace manual voice, and it went out over 60 folding chairs into a room with a stage at one end. No lot shall be occupied other than by a single family. He stopped. Is that all of it? That's all of it, he said. Now read the one you're asking them to put under it. He did not want to. I watched him decide, and I watched him decide the way he decides everything, which is that a thing asked in a meeting gets answered in the meeting. A single family is one person or two persons married to one another, together with their unmarried children, and not more than one additional dependent relative residing therein. He set the page down. Thank you, I said. And then I said the only thing I came there to say. My father died in 2012. My mother lived in that house 12 more years by herself. By the second one, the one you're asking this street to put in the deed, she stopped being a family the afternoon he died. I let that be all of it. Nobody sent her a letter. Merle, you shoveled her walk for 12 winters. There is a kind of quiet that a room full of people makes, and it is not the same as no sound. Somebody's chair creaked. A radiator came on. Up on the stage, the oatmeal curtain moved a little in the heat. Merle Vogt sat behind that folding table and did not answer me, because there was no answer. The rule he was defending would have thrown out the woman whose soup he ate in 1998, and every person in that room had known Adela Danko, and now they were all doing the same arithmetic at the same time about their own houses. I sat down. Nobody made a speech after me. That is the part I did not expect. I had braced for a fight, and what actually happened was that a room of 60 adults sat in a school cafeteria and looked at the floor. Roy Tolliver said, I'd like to withdraw the motion. Merle said, It's been seconded. Then I'd like to vote it down, Roy said. They voted it down on a show of hands. I did not count the hands, and I have never asked anyone what the count was. Merle said, The proposed amendment fails. The petition is closed. He said it the same way he said the retention pond. Then he stood up and put the chairs away, alone, 60 of them, while people filed out past him. And I know that because I was the last one to leave, and I looked back from the door. 3 things came out of that November, and I have never been able to put them in the order of which one cost the most. The first one happened the next morning, and I watched it from my kitchen window without knowing what it was. There was smoke coming out of the clubhouse chimney at 8:40 on a Sunday. Nobody uses that stove. It's an old cast iron thing in the corner by the kitchenette that the association keeps because taking it out would cost $400. I stood at my sink with a coffee cup and thought somebody had finally gotten around to it, and I went back to my Sunday. Delores told me 11 days later at the Dutch kitchen because she is on the board's phone tree and Kay had called her. Kay had certified the final count on the Saturday night and it went in the minutes. 49. That part is written down and it will be written down forever. Then on Sunday morning, Merle went down to the clubhouse at 8 with the file box. He burned the 6 tally sheets with the running count in his handwriting. He burned the owner of record cross-check list, the one with 77 lot numbers down the side and his marks beside them. Those 2 things together were the only way left on this earth to reconstruct who had signed. The sealed responses themselves went home with Kay and through the shredder in the school office on Monday, which is the rule for an unsuccessful confidential ballot and had been the rule since 1979. Kay asked him what he was doing, Delores said. And he said, "There is not going to be a list of names living on this street for 20 years. I put my fork down. She said he did it with the door open, and he didn't hide it, and he didn't explain it past that. Then he swept out the stove and went home. Dee sat there with her hands around her water glass. I'd have wanted to know, she said. You know that about me. I'd have wanted the list, and I'd have made myself sick with it. I have thought about that man burning paper in an empty clubhouse on a Sunday morning more than I have thought about any other part of this. I do not know if it was decency. I do not know if it was a man protecting 19 years of being the one everybody trusts. I do not know if he did it for the street or for himself, and I have made my peace with the fact that those are not separate things in most people, including me. He was re-elected president at the January meeting, unopposed. Kay put out a sheet for nominations and nobody wrote anything on it. He still cleans my gutters. He came in October the next year with the ladder on the truck, and he did it, and he left, and neither one of us has ever said one word about any of it. I have decided that I am not going to be the one who says it. That is either forgiveness, or it is the exact same cowardice I have had my whole life, and I have stopped trying to tell the difference. The second thing was the lilacs, and the lilacs started in April. Ardith Kolb is 81 and she lives at 4432, 4 doors down, and she has not driven since 2019. On the 14th of April, she came up my driveway pushing a garden cart with a 5-gallon bucket in it, and the bucket had a lilac in it, 4 feet of it, root-balled in wet burlap. "This one's yours," she said. "It came out of a coffee can on your mother's back step in 1989, and it's been in my side yard ever since. It's too big for that spot, always was," she said. "Ardith, that thing weighs 60 pounds. "I got it here," she said, which was not an answer to anything. I planted it on the north line, 12 feet in from the corner, out of the sight triangle. I checked the sight triangle. I am my father's daughter. Doris Egan brought one in May. The Pruitts brought one in June, and Angie Pruitt was the one who carried it up the driveway, 31 years old, in flip-flops, with her mother's face. Nadine Chumley did not bring one. Nadine is 73 and hers is up over her gutter and cannot be moved. She called me on the telephone and told me to come take suckers off it whenever I wanted. I have, twice. By the end of that first summer, there were 5 in the ground. There are 11 now. They are not a hedge. A hedge is a thing you plant all at once with a string line, and my father did that in 1969, and it took him a weekend. These are 11 separate bushes at 11 separate heights, with gaps between them where the stumps were ground out, and in April, they do not bloom on the same day. That is the whole of it, and I am not going to say anything clever about it. My mother gave away sticks and coffee cans to people who did not particularly like her for 40 years, without ever once mentioning it to her own daughters. Then a truck came and took her hedge down in 5 hours. And the street brought it back one bucket at a time, and nobody made a speech. The third thing was my sister. And the third thing is why I am telling you any of this instead of a nicer story. Lynette took the job in Terre Haute in March. She told me on a Sunday in the car on the way back from the cemetery at the four-way by the co-op, which is a place I now think about every single week. They called again in February, she said. I told them yes. I kept both hands on the wheel. When did they first call? And my sister looked straight out the windshield and said, April. Last April. I said, I know. We sat at that four-way for longer than a person sits at a four-way. Bonnie Traxler, she said. Bonnie Traxler. Since when? September, I said. And Lynette Danko put her hand over her mouth and made a sound I had not heard out of her since the day of Mom's funeral. You knew since September, she said. You let all of that happen and you never once used it on me. It wasn't mine to use. Cheryl, I would have gone in September. I would have gone and it would have been over. I know, I said. That's why. She moved in April. She has a condo with a balcony and a covered space. She is 71 minutes away and she is happier than she has been since 2016. She came home every Sunday that first year. Now she comes twice a month, and that is exactly right. And I am not going to pretend I don't count them. Here is the thing I did not see coming, and I want to say it plainly because it is the only part of this that still gets me. The house is a single-family home now. By the covenant, by the 1994 policy, by the sentence that never made it into the deed, one person living alone in the house she was born in. There is nothing left to enforce. There has not been a letter in 2 years, and there will never be another one. They could not make my sister leave. 9 weeks and 77 mailboxes and a number on a bulletin board, and they could not do it. And then she left anyway, for her own good reasons, which had been sitting in her for a year before anybody wrote me anything. And the house went and got itself into conformity all on its own. I do not know what to do with that. I have not figured out how to be glad about the part where I won. And the other piece, the one people ask me about when they hear this, no, I never found out. 28 houses did not sign. 49 did. 6 people over 2 years have told me to my face what they did, and 4 of those told me they signed, and I believe all 4 of them, and Delores was the first. The rest of that street I say good morning to. I say good morning to all of them, every one, the same way, and I have to because I don't know. I stand in the Kroger parking lot in Marion talking about somebody's knee replacement with a woman who might have put my sister's name in a sealed envelope, and I will never know. And she will go to her grave being nice to me. For a long time I thought that was a punishment. It isn't. It is just the price of living somewhere. My mother knew something I did not know for 56 years. She knew you do not find out who is on your side. You put a stick in a can and you carry it up somebody's walk, and you never ask them what they think of you. So that's what I do now. There is a folding table at the end of my driveway from the 1st of May to the middle of June. There are coffee cans on it, 6 or 8 at a time, with 2 sticks and 4 leaves each, and potting soil, and no sign, and no price, and no jar. They go. I have never once seen who takes them. Maybe you have been the one who kept a house standing for people who did not stay in it. Maybe you found out that the thing you fought for and the thing you loved were not the same thing. Then you already know what that folding table is for. Be careful what you let a piece of paper tell you about your own family, and then go be somebody's Saturday. If this one stayed with you, share this with a woman who has a sister or a street. And tell me what you would have done at that four-way by the co-op, because I have had 2 years and I am still not sure. Subscribe if you'd like to sit with us again. There's a new confession here every day, and I'll see you in the next one.